He gave me the best note I've ever got as an actor. He said, "You're enough. You don't need to do much. Keep it small." And I come from a sketch and improv background where gotta hit the back of the room and such. And when he gave me that note, I was just like, just listen and respond and be present in the moment.
Where are we going with this kid?
I have no idea. I just really like you.
For you, Jay, you've done so many films with your brother as co-director. This is your first solo feature as a director. And what made this film, this story, The Baltimorons, the one you've said, all right, I'm flying solo, and this is the movie I'm doing?
Well, I would say the number one thing that made this film the one I wanted to do was a sweet, gentle soul with dimples who happens to be trapped inside the body of a 1978 Chicago Bears linebacker.
I think that's me.
But there were a lot of reasons. It is my first original film in 14 years and my first without my brother. And, it took me a long time to get back to making movies. And honestly, it was just being on the tail end of the pandemic and the strikes and just turning 50 and realizing if I don't do it now, it's probably not going to happen. And so I just went back to my roots of just making stories about people that were around me and, super inspired people who have a lot of potential energy that seems to be untapped. And this guy was number one on my list.
Okay, so tell us about the collaboration. How did this even come about? How did you meet? And you wrote the film together, so how did that collaboration really come together?
Well, Jay and I met like most relationships in 2020 on the internet. One day he followed me on Instagram. I was doing dumb comedy videos like Buffalo Bill. I was doing Buffalo Bill talking to his Alexa, and I'd be like, "Alexa, where can I buy skin?" And then Alexa would respond and be like, "You can get skincare products." And I'm like, "No, human skin." And that's Jay Duplass's humor. And he followed me, and I was like, oh my God, Jay Duplass follows me. This is the coolest thing in the world. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to send him a DM and see if he can help me with this film that I was trying to do. And I sent it to him. And 6 months later, he responded. And he said, oh my God, I think you're super funny. Send me the script. I sent him the script, and he was like, come over to my house. And I was like, where your kids live? Like, I'm a stranger from the internet. Okay, sure. And this is the thing that gets me, because it's not really what I've experienced being out here, but this guy's really busy, and he took time out of his day for a stranger to help him with his art. And that's kind of who Jay Duplass is. And as a thank you, I took him out to lunch in 2022. And I told him a little bit about my story and how I got sober. That opening scene is very real to life. Oh, wow. And, I told him that the only reason why I'm still here is because the belt broke and I was holding a bit of holiday weight. And he smiled, and I said, you can laugh. After that lunch, I wrote on my manifestations for 2023, shoot a movie with Jay Duplass. Mm-hmm. Didn't know he hadn't done a movie in 12 years?
Yeah, at that point.
12, right?
Yeah.
And he called me 6 months later, and he said, I want to back in someone's life and do a movie. You're the first person that came to mind. Do you want to do it? And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to do that.
But I would love to hear, because, in the film, they're talking about improv, and they're talking about the yes and. I would love to hear how the script came about when there was going to be so much improv in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Michael telling me that story about being alive because the belt broke, he also told me one other thing that I think really, turned the engine in my brain as to what this story might be. And that was that he said when he first got sober, he was convinced that he would never be funny again, because Michael did tons of sketch comedy and he was sort of the Chris Farley of his troupe, and that wildness and, alcohol was a big part of that process. And I just thought that was a fascinating topic, and then he shared with me that once he got into the rooms of recovery, he started getting laughs in the rooms accidentally, and he was like, oh, maybe I can be funny and, again. And so that concept, that tremendous feeling of being an underdog, it also just felt very, very timely in the wake of the pandemic and the strikes, and where we all were, specifically with like independent film. I think we all had the feeling at that moment, like, is it over? You know, when we started conceiving this movie, nobody was knocking on our door and asking us to make a suicide, sobriety, menopause comedy.
But that's what they got.
That's right. Well, and as we all know, Hollywood thinks it wants certain things until you show them what they actually need. And so the whole process was, making a movie with very little money in 15 days on the streets of Baltimore.
Back up, 15 days.
15 days. Yeah, there's like 30, 40 locations.
Here's a film that is juggling a lot, but it is doing it in an improvisational way. So for you as a director, your first feature, loaded question, Jay. What were the directing challenges that you faced doing that balance?
I think the challenges were, you have your normal challenges of just making a movie, especially making an independent film, and doing it at Christmas time in Baltimore. It was very cold, and I was 50, and I didn't know if I was going to have the energy that I used to have, when I started making little movies when I was, in my 20s. Those are pretty normal. I think the biggest challenge, frankly, it was fear. It was fear of, I've never made a movie without my brother. I haven't made a movie in 14 years. Is this movie gonna be bad? Am I no good without my brother? Is he the special sauce? Is Fleetwood Mac breaking up and Mark is Stevie Nicks? I love Lindsey Buckingham, but I want to be Stevie Nicks, mainly because I think during that 14 years with Mark and me, what it took us a long time to really realize about each other, because we were being so careful about not wrecking our partnership as creators and as you said, supporters of independent film, and we have a company together. It took a long time for us to realize that he didn't really want to direct movies, and that's actually everything that I've always wanted to do. It is the number one thing. And so, as many people would look at my IMDb page, there's like tons of credits up there. The people who are close to me know that all I ever really wanted to do was to be the Coen Brothers 2.0 after I saw Raising Arizona in 1987. I had a run with my brother where we made a lot of movies in a short period of time, but he got famous. He really went into acting more, and I was just really terrified that I was not going to make something that was going to be worthy, and that my life's dream was going to die. It was that was the biggest obstacle. The whole process was ignore your fears, lean into love. It's the theme of the movie, and it's honestly the engine of how I was able to get it done, because like I said, nobody was asking for this suicide comedy.
What made Jay such a great actor's director that made you comfortable to keep going? Yes, and
He gave me the best note I've ever got as an actor. He said, "You're enough. You don't need to do much. Keep it small." And I come from a sketch and improv background and comedy, where it's gotta hit the back of the room and such. And when he gave me that note, I was just just listen and respond and be present in the moment. And Liz and I acted like there wasn't any cameras there,
right.
And we were just with each other. And that's all because of him, he said, he's like, "I know you're funny. I didn't know you could do anything else." I was a little, taking a big chance on that, to turn in something that's so personal in my own life and such a truly at the lowest point of my life and make it into this. It's next level,
Wow.
And I'm just so happy that I'm here to celebrate it.
I would love to hear about filming in Baltimore, and especially the scene with all the Christmas lights going on. Did you film during Christmas?
Oh yeah,
we never could have afforded those lights without it. We couldn't have afforded any of the lights unless we were shooting it. That's why we rushed and shot so fast on the ground. I talked about it being an available materials methodology of filmmaking. I mean, it absolutely was. Baltimore was amazing. They opened their doors to us. Like Michael said, we didn't pay for any locations. when our friend David Bonnet, who produced the film on the ground in Baltimore, we were asking him a bunch of questions. I was like, how much does a permit cost to shoot on the streets of Baltimore? And he said $45. And I said, oh my God, $45 a day, that's unbelievable. And he said, no, $45 total. $45 was the cost of the permit to shoot on the streets of Baltimore for the entirety of the shoot, and that includes 34th Street, which is Christmas Tree Lane, essentially. The shoot. That street was already blocked off, so it essentially became a sidewalk, and we just put signs up that said, if you're here, you agree to be in this movie. So a lot of people are in a movie that they weren't aware of.
Thank you both for making the Baltimorons.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys
everyone.
for being
Thank you
here.
so much for coming.